This story will open a door you didn't know was locked. Watch to the end, because the truth she finds will change what you call family. Some lies shout. Others build a life around you so quietly that you mistake them for walls. Amara always believed her mother was the safest room in the house. Until the night a loose floorboard turned the whole house into a question. Her mother, Ruth, had always been the kind of woman who loved in lists, grocery lists, prayer lists, chore charts. Love felt organized, safe, predictable. But grief arrived uninvited last spring when Ruth's knees failed her. Then her memory began to blur, and the lists disappeared like birds at dusk. Amara moved back home to help. She told herself it was for a month. Care has a way of changing calendars. On a rain-sore evening, after settling her mother to sleep, Amara mopped the hall like she always did when her mind was too loud. The mop snagged on a bump in the wood. She pressed her palm to it and felt the board give. Underneath was a shallow compartment wrapped in cloth that smelled like old cedar and an older sorrow. Inside, a blue envelope sealed with candle wax, Ruth's maiden initials pressed into it. A second item lay beneath, a brass hospital bracelet tiny as a question mark. She stared at the envelope, then at the sleeping door behind her, then back at the envelope. It had her mother's handwriting on the front, for Amara. Only when I cannot answer you. The rain grew louder. The house waited. Amara sat at the kitchen table, the one dinged at the corner from a childhood experiment with roller skates. She opened the letter carefully, like a window in a storm. My Amara, if you're reading this, I am either gone or memory has taken me to a place where I cannot be keeper of our truth. Forgive me. Secrecy is a poor blanket, but I used it because shame told me to shiver alone. Before you there was another child. Your sister. I named her Selah. I was 19, unmarried and terrified. My mother sent me to an aunt in another city. When the baby came, I was told she would be placed with a good family. I held her for 10 minutes. I never saw her again. Years later, I married your father, yes, your father, and we tried to find Selah, but laws and pride kept doors closed. I learned to fold pain into prayer. I never stopped loving you. I never stopped loving her. I kept the bracelet. If you choose to search, know this. Truth heals slow, but it heals. Mama. The room tilted. Amara's breath sounded like someone else's. Sister? Selah? Her mind rushed back through every moment she'd ever felt a ghost pass through her mother's eyes when babies cried or lullabies played on TV. She folded the letter and pressed it to her chest as if it had a pulse. Her phone buzzed with a work email that belonged to a different life. He powered it off. Then she went to her mother's door, leaned her head against the wood and whispered, Mama? Only the slow rhythm of Ruth's sleep replied. Amara slid to the floor and wept quietly, not from anger, but from meeting a hidden hallway in the house of her life. Morning arrived with the kind of light that tells the truth. Ruth asked for tea, then drifted into a fog of soft memories and wrong names. When Amara said, It's me, Ruth smiled tenderly and said, Of course, Selah. The mug shook in Amara's hand. The name her mother had never said aloud, ever, slipped out like a secret finally tired of hiding. Amara kissed Ruth's forehead, tucked the blanket around her and opened her laptop. She typed, Adoptee Reunion Private Search. Then closed Adoption 1990s State Records. Then, How to Find a Sibling When You Only Have a Hospital Bracelet. Search results turned into phone calls. Phone calls into hold music. Hold music into a hotline volunteer named Leanne who listened like she had all the time in the world. I can't promise anything, Leanne said gently, but I can start a compassionate search. I'll need details. Hospital, month, any other names. Amara read the letter again and again until the words blurred. There's a bracelet, she said. It has the hospital and a number. Send a photo, Leanne replied. And Amara, breathe. Whatever door we open, you'll walk through it one step at a time. Amara sent the photo and waited, listening to the house breathe. Days stretched into a nervous rhythm. Caregiving, list-making, checking email, praying awkward prayers to a God she wasn't sure how to approach with this. Ruth had better hours and worse ones. Some days she told the same childhood story 3 times before noon. Other days she stared past Amara like the present had misplaced them. One afternoon the phone rang. Unknown number. Amara? Leanne. Are you able to talk? Yes, Amara whispered, steadying herself against the counter. We found a match in a private registry. A woman born at the right hospital, right month, whose adoptive parents never changed her first name. A breath. Her name is Selah. She registered last year looking for her birth mother. If you're ready, I can pass along your email. Amara's knees nearly gave. She slid into a chair. I'm ready. When the call ended, she didn't move for a full minute. Then she walked to her mother's room. Ruth was awake, humming a hymn she rarely remembered. Mama, Amara said softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. Do you know the name Selah? Ruth's eyes filled with a clean, sudden clarity. Hi baby, she said. I named her for the pause between notes. Tears glistened like rain on a window. I used to dream I'd hear that name in this house. Amara held her mother's hand. You might, she whispered. Ruth's face crumpled, not in shame but in hope, finally given permission to exist. That night, an email arrived from Selah Winters with the subject line, I think we belong to the same story. They arranged a video call. Amara spent an hour on hair, then tore it down and tried again. What is the dress code for meeting a missing part of yourself? The sound connected. A woman with familiar eyes stared back. Older by 2 years, hair in a bun that had lost the battle, smile trembling but stubborn. Hi, Selah said, then laughed at the smallness of the word. I don't know what to say without crying. We can cry, Amara said. We've both waited long enough. They compared facts. Selah's adoptive parents were kind, stable people who told her she'd been chosen with love, but never shared more than the basics. I used to write letters to my unknown mother, Selah confessed, and tuck them under my pillow like the tooth fairy worked for secrets. They spoke for 2 hours without noticing hunger. Selah loved cinnamon rolls. Amara hated them. Selah hated melon. Amara loved it. Selah photographed strangers' hands for a living. Amara designed book covers. Both collected old hymnals from thrift stores for no good reason. Both said sorry too much. Both had a laugh that started low and ended high like a bird taking off. Can I meet her? Selah asked. Amara looked toward the hall. Her good hours come and go, she said gently. But yes, I think this is why the floorboard finally gave up. They said a day. Amara hung up and cried into a dish towel, all salt and relief. Then she heard Ruth call from her room. Amara, is it time? For what, Mama? For the pause to end, Ruth said, eyes bright like a window lit from within. Selah arrived with trembling hands and tulips she nearly forgot in the car. When Amara opened the door, they stared for a heartbeat, then folded into each other like pages in the same book. Ruth was in her chair by the window, the one spot where afternoon reminded her what hour it was. When Selah stepped into the room, Ruth's face traveled through 3 emotions so quickly the body could barely hold them. Shock, grief, joy. Then everything softened. Selah, she breathed. Selah knelt, placed her palms on Ruth's knees, and looked up like a child looking into rain for the first time. Hi, Mama. Ruth cupped her face. I am so sorry. Selah smiled through tears. I know, she said. I think I always did. They cried like the room was an altar. Amara stood with her hand over her mouth, afraid to move and spook the miracle. Ruth spoke in bursts. About 19 and scared, about a mother whose love was made of iron and rules, about an aunt who said it was best and a social worker who looked like she wanted to disagree but didn't. She confessed to hiding the letter because shame grew roots in the dark. She asked forgiveness no one in the room needed her to beg for. Selah told stories about her adoptive mom who braided her hair every Sunday and her adoptive dad who taught her to fix leaky faucets and mend broken hearts with patient jokes. I'm loved, she said. I was never unloved. I was just misplaced. They laughed. They cried again. Time loosened its jaw and let them be. Amara brought tea. 3 mugs. No one drank. That night, after Selah left with a promise to return tomorrow, Ruth took Amara's hand. I'm not proud of my fear, she said, but I'm proud of you. You opened a door I welded shut. Amara kissed her. We opened it, she said. Together. 2 days later, the doorbell rang while Amara was helping Ruth with her cardigan. Selah stood on the porch, eyes red from happy, next to a man with a hat in his hands. This is Elias, Selah said, voice shaky. He's my adoptive dad. He swallowed. He asked if he could meet you. Only if you want. No pressure. Ruth straightened, smoothed her sweater and walked slowly to the doorway. She looked at the man who had carried her child for 2 decades with gentle integrity. Elias removed his hat. I don't want to take space that isn't mine, he said, voice soft but firm. But I've prayed for you since the day we met our daughter. I told her, somewhere, a mother loved you so much she suffered so you wouldn't. I wanted to come say thank you. Ruth's shoulders trembled. She reached out both hands. Then come in, she said through tears. Let's not make our girl stand between two houses. They sat together at the table. Elias told the story of tiny Selah and the first colic night. Ruth told the story of the cedar-smelling room where she hid her grief. Amara listened like a historian of miracles. At one point, Elias's large work-scarred hands wrapped around Ruth's smaller ones, and Amara noticed the same bend in his thumb that Selah had. Not blood, not DNA, just the shape of kindness pressed into a life. Something in Amara's chest unclenched. Family, she realized, was bigger than the maps we draw for it. The next weeks were a quilt. Some squares bright, some uneven, all stitched by willingness. They planned small things. A picnic in the park, a photo by the old oak, a trip to the thrift store where Amara and Selah pretended not to race toward the hymnals. Ruth had good days where she remembered new memories. Bad days where she called Amara teacher and asked for homework. On a good day they recorded a voice note together. Ruth said into the mic, Selah, I loved you the whole time. Selah pressed the phone to her heart. Amara watched them and felt the familiar ache of not enough. Not enough time, not enough what's, not enough chance to give Ruth the years she lost. One evening, sitting alone on the porch swing, she whispered to the dusk, how do I carry love and anger in the same hands? The wind answered with a small leaf landing in her lap. She laughed at herself. Okay, she said, gently. She wrote Ruth's story out in a notebook. Dates, real words, the parts that were ugly, the parts that were holy. She titled it Selah, the pause that became a song. Not for publication, for remembrance. Ruth's last clear day arrived with simple grace. She called both daughters to her chair by the window. The afternoon poured gold on the carpet like spilled honey. Let me say this while I can, Ruth began. Shame convinced me to choose silence and call it strength. It wasn't. Strength is telling the truth and trusting love to hold it. She reached for Amara's hand. You were my anchor. She reached for Selah's. You were my ache that became joy. Elias stood in the doorway, hat on his chest, eyes shining. And you, Ruth smiled at him, were heaven's kindness to the girl I couldn't keep. They prayed, awkward and beautiful. They laughed about cinnamon rolls and hymnals. Ruth dozed. That night, she slipped away the way she'd lived when she wasn't afraid, quietly. The funeral was small. Selah read a psalm and stumbled only once on the word mercy. Elias sang low harmony like a benediction. After the last amen, Amara hugged her sister for a long time beside the new stone and said, the pause really did become a song. Months later, on a Sunday afternoon that smelled like rain deciding to be gentle, Amara and Selah stood in the kitchen making tea they would probably forget to drink. On the wall hung a photo. Ruth in her chair, both daughters at her sides, and Elias behind them like a lighthouse keeper who understood where his light belonged. Family didn't look like a straight line. Looked like people who stayed when truth finally knocked. Amara opened the notebook and read the last line she wrote after the funeral. We didn't get back what was taken, but we got back what mattered. Each other and a house no longer afraid of its own floorboards. She closed the book and smiled at her sister. Stay for dinner? Selah grinned. Always. The kettle began to sing. This time they listened. Lessons from my story. 1. Secrecy shrinks love. Shame promises protection, but it slowly starves connection. 2. Truth heals slowly, but it heals. You may not recover lost time, but you can reclaim lost belonging. 3. Family is larger than DNA. It includes everyone who carries you with honest care. 4. Compassionate searches matter. A name, a number, a bracelet. Small clues can open sacred doors. 5. Forgiveness isn't amnesia. It's remembering rightly with boundaries and gratitude for the helpers. 6. Write the story down. Facts become a map. Memory becomes a home where healing knows where to sit. If this story helped you breathe around a secret, write this in the comments. Truth heals slow. I'm ready. Subscribe to Echoes of Her Tears for original cinematic stories where hidden pain becomes honest peace, and where family is rebuilt with light.